Yeah, so that's a great question. I think as we look at various areas that are relaxing their shelter in place orders, we're really looking at three trends. In terms of buildings, we're looking at the fact that buildings are probably going to have lower occupancy. They're going to be designed more for modularity, and employers are going to put processes and procedures in place to create safe and healthy environments for their employees. So when we talk a little bit about each of these, the lower occupancy, that's going to drive a need for more flexible environments so that the spaces can be converted for multi-use. This is also going to have more need for advanced controls and building management systems that can respond to those changing activities. And then also that's going to improve energy efficiency and the ability to respond to the occupants' needs. In terms of modularity, I think a lot of buildings are going to want to support a quick conversion of space to different purposes. So, offices may convert to more open areas to support social distancing and, better airflow, the ability to convert very quickly should those needs change. And of course, public facilities such as schools or event centers are certainly going to be looking at multi-use criteria to support future emergency or crisis management overflow types of situations. So for the employers of these buildings or the building owners, they're going to be looking at bringing employees back, and safety and security is a top priority. And they'll want those employees to be safe and feel safe. And some of them are very simple things like reconfiguring for social distancing, requiring workers to wear masks and more sanitation stations available to those employees. I think there's going to be a lot of focus on improved air quality. And all of this is going to be activities to lower the risk of exposure to germs and viruses. So I think each of these three trends, the modularity, the need for more flexibility and lower occupancy, and then improving the health and safety of buildings, is going to lead to more increased activity for building renovations.
Absolutely. UV germicidal lighting is a viable solution to create healthier buildings by reducing the level of harmful bacteria and viruses that occupants can be exposed to. So UV germicidal lighting is not a new concept. Its airborne, surface, and water antimicrobial effectiveness has long been established. So what is UV germicidal lighting, or GUV, or UVG? Well, it's short wavelength ultraviolet light that has been shown to kill bacteria and inactivate viruses. The spectral band of radiant energy from 100 to 280 nanometers is also known as UVC. Historically, the industry has used sources that generate predominantly 254 nanometer UV radiant energy. These sources include low and medium pressure mercury lamps, along with xenon arc lamps. Emerging technology includes light-emitting diodes, or LEDs, and krypton chlorine excimer lamps, which emit in narrow bands in the germicidal, or UVC, range. LEDs are typically centered at about 274 nanometers and have properties similar to the conventional 254 nanometer lamps. Krypton chlorine excimer lamps emit in what is termed far UVC at 207 or 222 nanometer radiant energy. The advantage of these sources emitting the 207 or 222 nanometer radiant energy is that the deactivation rate of some bacteria and viruses appear to be relatively high, and the effect of the emission on the human skin and eyes is much reduced compared to the 254 nanometer mercury emission, So for krypton, chlorine, excimer lamps to provide the greatest level of protection for human skin and eyes, a filtering technology must be employed to remove the potentially harmful wavelengths above 230 nanometers. So the effectiveness of germicidal lighting depends not only on the specific wavelength being considered, but greatly on the exposure dose, or the amount and duration of the exposure to the radiant energy, which is measured in millijoules per centimeter squared. So now that we've covered the technology, let's discuss methods or applications for reducing exposure to pathogen. So disinfecting room air. A popular method of disinfecting room air is upper room GUV air disinfection using 254 nanometers. This is considered a safe and highly effective method of air disinfection, but the installation must be carefully planned, installed, commissioned, and maintained to ensure the safety of individuals and occupants. It works best in rooms with high ceilings, and a knowledgeable consultant is highly recommended. So because this method uses the 254 nanometer UVC irradiation, there exists the risk of eye injury for anyone working in the upper room, for example on a ladder when the fixtures are operational. Training of installers and maintenance workers is critical to prevent eye and skin injury. Individuals exceeding the daily limit of the 254 nanometer UVC exposure can experience temporary but painful irritation to the cornea and hazardous exposure of the skin, including the absorption in the living skin cell layers. So another common method of air disinfection includes installing GUV in the HVAC air handling units. This method of GUV using 254 nanometer effectively treats recirculated air and reduces mold growth on cooling coils. As with upper room disinfection, the installation and maintenance must be carefully planned and executed to ensure the safety of workers and maintenance personnel. However, unlike upper room air disinfection, germicidal UV in air handling equipment does relatively little to prevent person-to-person transmission in a room where both an infectious source and other susceptible persons share the same air. So let's talk a little bit about air and surface disinfection. A direct GUV source can be an excellent method of reducing pathogens in air and on surfaces. We must note that UV generally does not reflect from most surfaces, although there are some exceptions, and cannot reach pathogens under surface dirt or otherwise coated in the air. The inability of the UV radiant energy to reach shadowed recesses of surfaces or to penetrate coverings like dust and other matter may also negatively affect the pathogen reduction. For these reasons, GUV is typically used as a supplemental control measure for reducing exposure to pathogens. As a direct GUV source, 254 nanometer must be controlled such that occupants are not directly exposed, meaning they have to be used in unoccupied spaces. The far UVC 222 nanometers, when filtered, can be used in direct GUV applications in occupied spaces within the appropriate design parameters that meet published safety guidelines and standards for exposures to occupants. A little bit about autonomous mobile GUV units using 254 nanometer sources. These are what we normally term as the robots. They are gaining popularity and they are used for surface cleaning in unoccupied spaces. These units can achieve a high level of disinfection and be deployed throughout a facility. for targeted specific locations. Staff and maintenance workers training is critical, as well as ensuring spaces remain unoccupied during use. Finally, I want to highlight an exciting new application for air and pathogen reduction. GUV modules with radiant energy in the 222 nanometer range are being incorporated into general illumination luminaires. So remember the krypton chlorine sources discussed under the emerging technology? These 222 nanometer narrowband radiation products have gained attention, with studies showing that the far UVC radiation, when filtered, can efficiently inactivate bacteria without harm to exposed skin and eyes. This technology, most importantly, can be used within safety guidelines and standards in occupied and unoccupied spaces. These sources are being incorporated into open luminaires for air and surface disinfection. The UV light disinfection technology functions separately and independently from the general illumination.
Yeah, definitely. The energy efficiency does become a key consideration. It's always been an important consideration, but especially now. And it's important for the building owners to look at the life cycle of the building and the equipment to include technologies that can lower those energy costs and the maintenance. So while installing LED lighting can significantly reduce your energy use, adding some simple controls can also increase that more significantly. So in the case that we have shown in the graphic, a renovation from a 3-lamp fluorescent tropper to an LED luminaire saves about 60% in energy and maintenance. And so that's great, but it's a static system. Simply by adding the occupancy sensors, you can increase that energy savings to 75%. And if you overlay that with daylight harvesting, the overall energy savings can be as much as 83%. So for many applications, these are relatively simple renovations with minimal construction disruptions to the occupants and result in very significant energy savings. We've also talked about the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act, in one of our previous programs. And this is in this act, there was a provision that made an important tax correction for qualified improvement property, or QIP. The QIP correction now allows 100% deduction in the first year for commercial interior lighting equipment. So this is huge in terms of not only do you get the energy savings, but you get this tax deduction where you can deduct all the qualified equipment in that very first year. So an investment in energy efficient lighting equipment can result in 20% increase in profit after tax. So there's really no better time to make these lighting and control improvements in buildings, and it improves the quality of the lighting as well as reducing the operating expenses and increased after-tax profit. There are also some non-energy benefits. Tanya, why don't you talk about some of those?
I'm glad you asked, Cheryl. In addition to the energy savings gained by making lighting improvements or upgrades, there are non-energy benefits that can be achieved in the same project. By installing a networked or connected lighting control systems, such as Acuity Brand's Atrius platform, building occupants and owners can unlock several non-energy benefits. In a retail environment, customer experiences are enhanced as the platform allows for customers to easily navigate to products, discover relevant product information, and connect with store associates for immediate assistance. Retailers can increase sales by strategically locating merchandise, by understanding customer traffic patterns, and improve store operations by visualizing live locations of associates and customers for better store management. In an office setting, a connected lighting system can connect employees to spaces using occupancy sensing for room scheduling, enabling personal control, and facilitating optimized designs based on actual usage of office and collaboration spaces. Building owners can leverage readily available data and utilize web applications that allow for energy monitoring and office management from anywhere at any time. In a warehouse application, asset tracking and management are achievable as well as task-tuned luminaires for improved visibility and light quality. So lighting upgrades can also include the installation of LED luminaires with color tuning, the ability to adjust the color temperature of white light from a warm amber to a cool blue. A color tuning lighting system may be installed for preference or design flexibility, or for enhanced circadian benefits such as reduced restlessness and to support morning alertness.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about legislation and regulations in this post-COVID environment. We talked a little bit about the coronavirus aid package, the CARES Act, which was passed in March, and it was designed specifically to provide some immediate relief to individuals and families, really to help bridge this economic downturn during the virus and the post-COVID recovery. Since then, there's been a lot of discussion regarding the economic recovery, but there's a lot of different opinions and approaches to how to create this future stimulus. Some of the policy has focused on more relief for impacted workers and direct support for medical and first responders. Others have focused more on infrastructure, energy, and environmental policy. So the infrastructure policy is something that gets a lot of airtime, a lot of discussion, and in the past it's really been a bipartisan type of policy focus because it can stimulate jobs, businesses. It also addresses energy and climate change issues. But the scope and the cost have become key sticking points recently in Congress. There have been proposals that include energy and climate change, but the proposals have been very costly and appear to be more about messaging in an election year rather than the intent to pass legislation that could actually become law. The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee has announced that it's going to revitalize its efforts to enact a surface transportation or highway bill this year. The committee released a $500 billion surface transportation bill that not only addressed the topics like roads and bridges and transit systems, but also included some climate mitigation provisions. And then just this week, a $1.5 trillion package will be considered in the House, and it's called the Moving Forward Act. And it's very broad, likely to have difficult gaining support in the Senate because of the cost. But this bill includes some really good elements that could be included in a conference bill with the Senate or in their surface transportation bill. So some of the provisions for lighting systems may include state grants for energy efficiency improvements, providing retrofitting assistance for schools, and extending or expanding the 179D energy efficiency building tax deduction, the deduction that we've known for many years called the EPAC deduction. That deduction could be extended through 2025 and even expanding the scope of that. A more recent energy-focused bill has been recently introduced by Senator Smith from Minnesota and Rochester from Delaware, and it's titled the Open Back Better Act. And this bill focuses on mission-critical facility renewal. So if it's passed, it would provide $20 billion in federal funding for schools, hospitals, federal buildings, and other public facilities to generate more than $100 billion in energy efficient investments. So proposals like this are designed to be developed quickly and put people back to work, reopen safe business environments, and improve the infrastructure for energy efficiency and resiliency. While this bill's just been introduced, it's certainly going to require bipartisan support for it to move forward. So in this day and time, predicting legislative outcomes is really very difficult and problematic. There will be a focus on rebuilding the economy and improving unemployment, but there's also going to be a watchful eye on controlling the deficit. So while there'll be some movement on the Surface Transportation Act, it could be a simple short-term extension to the current program. A comprehensive infrastructure bill is highly unlikely to be passed this year and become law. But these bills that we've discussed here today, include important provisions for construction and energy efficiency that could establish the key policy provisions for Congress in 2021. Tanya, what's going on with some of the energy programs and certifications?
Well, the current trend includes regulatory agencies and energy efficiency certification programs moving forward with their established regulatory and implementation agendas and timelines. I'll briefly cover updates from the DLC, Energy Star, the Department of Energy, and the California Energy Commission. So in February of 2020, the Design Lights Consortium, or DLC, released the final versions of its technical requirements for solid-state lighting products, versions 5.0 and 5.1. While the latest requirements have less focus on efficacy or energy efficiency, there is significant focus on what the organization terms as quality of light metrics. These parameters include glare and color rendering and use metrics like UGR, which is Unified Glare Ratings, and the IES TM30 metrics like local chroma shift values that are not well established in the US. With the implementation of the updated technical requirements, the DLC is requiring all currently qualified products on its Qualified Products List, or QPL, to be recertified at a significant cost to manufacturers. The DLC QPL is used by utilities and energy efficiency program administrators to establish rebates and incentives for energy efficient products. It will be a huge burden and substantial undertaking for lighting manufacturers to bring currently certified and new products into compliance with the new requirements. The lighting industry petitioned the DLC, seeking a pause in the implementation timeline, citing the slowed economy and uncertain supply chain environment caused by the coronavirus pandemic. To date, no substantial relief has been granted by the DLC, and utilities face an uncertain supply of qualified LED lighting products in the coming year. The Energy Star lighting program has signaled that it plans to update the program specifications for both lamps and luminaires, which will require requalification of all currently certified products. Specification development for luminaires is expected to begin in late 2020, and the timeline for the lamp specification is more fluid as the agency waits until the lawsuits involving DOE definitions are settled and the DOE moves forward with publishing a final rule for general service lamps. So speaking of the DOE, or Department of Energy, this federal agency is moving forward with its regulatory agenda and has issued several RFIs, or requests for information, pertaining to rulemaking activities for lighting products. These lighting product categories that we should anticipate regulatory action include battery chargers, external power supplies, illuminated exit signs, general service lamps, general service fluorescent lamps and incandescent reflector lamps, fluorescent lamp ballast, and metal halide luminaires. Moving on to California, and specifically the California Energy Commission, or CEC, this agency is continuing with its 2022 code development cycle for Title 24, California's Building Energy Efficiency Regulations. The Codes and Standards Enhancement, or CASE teams that are run by California Investor-Owned Utilities, or IOUs, hosted a few webinars earlier this year and issued several draft reports in recent weeks. In the 2022 code development cycle, the code change proposals for lighting focus on non-residential applications. These proposals include lighting zone reclassification, updates to the lighting power allowances for multi-family outdoor lighting and general hardscape outdoor lighting. It includes updated requirements for demand-responsive lighting systems, and also updates the lighting power densities for indoor lighting, including revised control requirements for multi-zone occupancy sensing in large offices.